Why would Donald Trump spend hours with an underage girl at Jeffrey Epstein's house? Why? What is he mentoring the young lady? Very quickly, before I get started here, because in the spirit of this video, which is about accountability for our leaders, for the people that we place in high positions, I want you to please go check out an interview Brittany Page did on her channel with Professor Terence Keel, who wrote the book, The Coroner's Silence. This is about the collusion between coroners' offices and police departments to cover for the crimes of police. There's a disconnect between what we know in our hearts, yeah, we know that's been going on for a long time, and then actually having evidence of it. It is a fantastic interview that is so illuminating and could give you ammunition in conversations about this type of topic. So go check it out. There'll be a link below and a pinned comment at the top of this video for you also to go check that interview out and subscribe to her channel while you're there. In the spirit of accountability for leaders, in the spirit of talking about things that we know in our gut to be true, but don't really have the hard evidence that could be brought to bear to a grand jury to secure an indictment, a bomb has dropped in the Epstein case relative to Donald Trump, and it came at the hands of the oversight Democrats in the House of Representatives. I hold in my hands right now 3 emails that are between Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and Michael Wolff and Jeffrey Epstein, all thick as thieves, trying to come up with talking points and excuses while incriminating Donald Trump, the current president of the United States. And you can't say, MAGA world, you can't say, well, this is all just an attempt to take Donald Trump down, to stop him from being president. When one of the emails is from April of 2011. I will remind you, Donald Trump came down the escalator like in June or July of 2015. Being president wasn't on the radar for Donald Trump. This isn't a takedown, a radical left lunatics trying to take down Donald Trump. Pretty remarkable. Here's the post on Blue Sky from the House Oversight Dems. Breaking, oversight Dems have received new emails from Jeffrey Epstein's estate that raise serious questions about Donald Trump and his knowledge of Epstein's horrific crimes. Read them for yourself. It's time to end this cover-up and release the files. This also gives some indication, some behind the scenes of why Hakeem Jeffries has been so beating the drum about the pedophile protection program of the Republic. All of a sudden, he started using that. And now we know it's because they have this evidence. And I'm going to read these emails and then a little bit from the New York Times to try to give this some context. This is from April 2011. It's a response. I'll read the bottom email first. This is Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell. I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. This victim, they've redacted her name, this victim, underage victim of sexual violence, spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. I'm 75% there. To which she responded, Ghislaine Maxwell responded, I have been thinking about that. Why would Donald Trump spend hours with an underage girl at Jeffrey Epstein's house? Why? What is he mentoring the young lady who on the side is being sex trafficked and raped against her will by Jeffrey Epstein and his pals? Donald Trump being one of those pals? Why? What rational reason, what reason that wouldn't strain credulity and rationality? What reason would he have? A grown man, an elderly man, spending hours with a trafficked young lady at Jeffrey Epstein's house. That was April 2011. This is December 2015. This is from Michael Wolff. Again, Michael Wolff has a lot of questions to answer with his continued relationship, advice giving of Jeffrey Epstein, helping, aiding, and abetting, at this point, a convicted child rapist and child trafficker, a convicted. And Michael Wolff, while playing the righteous journalist on the Daily Beast podcast, is actually thick as thieves with these individuals as well. He is a disgusting, disgraceful individual. This is from Michael Wolff to Jeffrey Epstein in response to some of these. And maybe I'll read some of these responses first. I hear CNN planning to ask Trump tonight about his relationship with you, either on air or in a scrum afterwards, to which Jeffrey Epstein replied, if I were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be? Asking advice of Michael Wolff, this up to this point, kind of this righteous, self-righteous individual is writing these books about Donald Trump and what a terrible human being is, when he's inside knowledge because he's in the club. This is his response on what should the answer be to a how do we craft an answer for Donald Trump? Craft an answer for Donald Trump. They're still close enough to be able to, here's what you say, Donald. And this is what Michael Wolff said. I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the house, then that gives you valuable PR and political currency. They're admitting here that everything with Donald Trump is transactional, which tracks. That maps on to the reality that we know to be true about Donald Trump. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you, or if it really looks like he could win the presidency, you could save him, generating a debt. Of course, it is possible that when asked, he'll say Jeffrey is a great guy and has gotten a raw deal and is a victim of political correctness, which is to be outlawed in the Trump regime, which is, I guess, floating what Donald Trump could say. And then finally, January 2019, this is from Jeffrey Epstein to Michael Wolff. They're still involved with one another. This particular underage female victim at Mar-a-Lago, then this other element is redacted. Trump said he asked me to resign, never remember ever, quote, and then, obviously all of this is a quote, but I highlighted it, so it made me say quote. Of course, he knew about the girls and he asked Ghislaine to stop. We're going to get to that. It really does put into context some of the clues, some of the clips that we've played of Donald Trump on Air Force One making excuses, downplaying what took place at his property relative to sex trafficking and the rape, the systematic rape of many women, many young girls, and the Democrats have brought this to bear. Now, what do we know? We know that Donald Trump knew. Jeffrey Epstein said it in that email in 2011. Donald Trump knew. Something Donald Trump has denied knowing. Now, what do we have evidence of, but that would have to go before a grand jury with other evidence? Because, by the way, this is not the only tranche of emails. This is probably not even the worst of it. There is more to be found out. There's more to be discovered through the subpoenas, through investigation, through the release of more emails. We're going to find out all kinds of stuff that makes this look like child's play. That would be my prediction. But what are we going to learn that can be uncovered and proven legally? Legally, not what we know in our hearts, not credibly accused child rapist of children, Donald Trump. No, what are we going to be able to find out? That's the question. Hours alone with one of the underage female victims. Hours alone. Which does, like I said, put into new light this particular clip from Donald Trump on Air Force One, talking about the kidnapping, talking about the stealing of the girls from Mar-a-Lago, from the spa. It's from the spa. Yeah, from the spa. Stolen from Donald Trump. Remember this moment.
Epstein has a certain reputation, obviously. Just curious, were some of the workers that were taken from you, were some of them young women?
Were some of them
young women?
well, I don't want to say, but everyone knows the people that were taken. And it was the concept of taking people that work for me is bad. But that story's been pretty well out there. And the answer is yes, they were.
Yes, they were. Yes,
Yeah.
What did they do?
In the
What
spa.
kind of jobs? In the spa.
Yeah, it's people that work in the spa. I have a great spa, one of the best spas in the world at Mar-a-Lago. And people were taken out of the spa, hired by him. In other words, gone. And other people would come and complain, this guy is taking people from the spa. I didn't know that. And then when I heard about it, I told him, I said, listen, we don't want you taking our people, whether it was spa or not spa. I don't want him taking people. And he was fine. And then not too long after that, he did it again. And I said, out of here.
Mr. President, did one of those stolen, persons, that include Virginia Jeffrey?
I don't know. I think she worked at the spa. I think so. I think that was one of the people. Yeah. He stole her. And by the way, she had no complaints about us, as you know.
I mean, look, it was already bad. It was already bad. This just makes it even worse. This is a headline from the New York Times. Epstein alleged in emails that Trump knew of his conduct. In a message obtained by Congress, the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein wrote that Donald Trump spent hours at his house with one of Mr. Epstein's victims. In one of the messages, Mr. Epstein flatly asserted that Mr. Trump, quote unquote, knew about the girls, many of whom were later found by investigators to have been underage. In another, Mr. Epstein pondered how to address questions from the news media about their relationship as Mr. Trump was becoming a national political figure. And this is about as telling as it gets. The White House did not immediately respond to requests for comment. They didn't say fake news. They didn't say witch hunt. They didn't rattle off some nonsense about radical left lunatics. They said, cricket, cricket, cricket. Silence as they scramble and craft a response. That's where we are right now. Michael Wolff is in this up to his neck. Obviously, Ghislaine Maxwell is in it, getting wild special treatment in her minimum security country club federal prison. Why is she getting special treatment? What does she know that Donald Trump wants to keep her silent about? If I were Ghislaine Maxwell, I would be watching my six. I'd be looking over my shoulder to make sure I'm not ready to be murdered in order to secure her silence. That's what I'd be worried about. Why did Donald Trump give Alex Acosta, the guy who knew everything about Jeffrey Epstein, he was the prosecutor at the time, the U.S. attorney for the district in Florida there, that gave the sweetheart deal to Jeffrey Epstein, why did he get to be Secretary of Labor under Donald Trump? Why was he given the lofty Secretary of Labor? That wasn't his purview. That wasn't his expertise. He was given a cabinet position by Donald Trump in the first term. People are being treated special who are related to this case to secure their silence, I believe. We're going to find out more. Now, we need Democrats to hang together. We need Democrats to stop advancing the agenda of this possible pedophile, this certain protector of pedophiles. That's what we need. I invite you to this conversation. Again, go check out that video from Brittany Page's channel. Go subscribe while you're there. This is a bombshell. I mean, this is the definition of a bombshell story, and we're going to be following it.
The notion that 8 Republican senators would give themselves the ability, essentially, to rip millions of taxpayer dollars away from the American people so they could line their pockets because these people were insurrectionist sympathizers is insanity.
So in this spending bill, you're probably hearing a lot about it this morning, that there's this sneaky Senate provision that I would categorize as a bribe for United States senators, a bribe that allows Donald Trump to enrich these particular 8 senators who colluded with Donald Trump to try to overturn the 2020 election, to try to overthrow the United States government in a sense, these insurrectionist-friendly United States senators who, when Jack Smith started doing his investigation to find out who was talking to who was saying what the communication network was of individuals attempting to get Donald Trump into the Oval Office again, even though he lost the election by 7+ million votes. That's what it is. It's bribery. And I'm going to explain what it is. But I also, before I get started, want to say this. Thank you to the 8 Democrats, the 7 Democrats, and 1 independent in Angus King from Maine who allowed this to be possible. Hopefully, this does not come to fruition. This whole thing gets washed out because of this particular insanity. And that's what it is. Hakeem Jeffries even labeled it that. But first, let me remind you of the Democrats who have brought us here. The Democrats, these cowards who surrendered to Republicans. These turncoats, not just to Democrats in general, but to the American people who are going to see their health care premiums double, triple, quadruple, and many will just lose it altogether because they can't afford that. Who are they? Again, here's from the Washington Post. Late night Senate deal opens path to ending shutdown, but splits Democrats. The deal doesn't extend expiring ACA subsidies. And if the bill passes the Senate, it needs the House to approve and President Donald Trump on board. These are them. These are they, Democratic Senators Catherine Cortez Masto of Nevada, Tim Kaine of Virginia, Dick Durbin of Illinois, John Fetterman, no surprise, of Pennsylvania, Maggie Hassan of New Hampshire, Jackie Rosen of Nevada, and Jeanne Shaheen of New Hampshire. New Hampshire and Nevada, replete with cowards and turncoats, apparently. And, of course, Angus King, the independent who caucuses with Democrats from Maine. So this is going to allow Donald Trump, through the DOJ, to bribe, pay off Republican senators who attempted to overthrow the government, who made phone calls on behalf of Donald Trump to the Secretary of State of Georgia. I'm talking about Lindsey Graham. And when the investigation took place and their phones were tracked, all of a sudden now it's, this is spying. No, it's not. It's investigating an attempted overthrow of the United States government in which you played a role. This is from the New York Times. Spending bill would pave way for senators to sue over phone searches. Republicans have voiced outrage that Jack Smith looked at GOP lawmakers' phone records surrounding the January 6th attack. Legislation to reopen the government would allow them to sue for $500,000 each. Now, many would say, well, suing doesn't necessarily mean they're going to win the case. But with their suing the federal government, if the federal government just lays down and pays it, agrees, yeah, okay, we did this. We're going to plead guilty in a sense. We're not going to contest the charges. We'll just settle out of court with these particular United States senators. Each one of them is then now $500,000 richer. That's what we're looking at. It's a bribe. It's a bribe. The provision tucked into a measure to fund the legislative branch appears to immediately allow for 8 GOP senators to sue the government over their phone records being seized in the course of an investigation by Jack Smith, the former special counsel, into the riot at the Capitol on January 6th, 2021. It was an insurrection. It wasn't just a riot, New York Times. The provision would make it a violation of the law to not notify a senator if their phone records or other metadata was taken from a service provider like a phone company. There are some exceptions, such as 60-day delays in notification if the senator is considered the target of an investigation. Because the provision is retroactive to 2022, what a coincidence that it just so happens to be retroactive to the coincidental period of time when they were being looked into and their phone records. It's not a record of what they said because it's just who they called. That's what they're looking at here. This is because the provision is retroactive to 2022. It would appear to make eligible the 8 lawmakers whose phone records were subpoenaed by investigators for Mr. Smith as he examined the efforts of Donald Trump to obstruct the results of the 2020 presidential election. Each violation would be worth at least $500,000 in any legal claim. According to the bill language, the bill would also sharply limit the way the government could resist such a claim, taking away any government claims of qualified or sovereign immunity to fight a lawsuit over the issue. The Republican senators, and here they are, we're going to name names here. The Republican senators whose phone records were subpoenaed as part of the investigation. And what you should take away when you hear that sentence, that the Republican senators whose phone records were subpoenaed as part of the investigation, these are the insurrection apologists. These are the anti-democracy ghouls who attempted to overthrow the United States government and nullify the will of the people, to disenfranchise 71 plus million Americans who voted for Joe Biden. That's who these assholes are. Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, Marsha Blackburn and Bill Hagerty of Tennessee, Josh Hawley of Missouri, Dan Sullivan of Alaska, Tommy Tuberville of Alabama, Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, and Cynthia Lummis of Wyoming, Representative Mike Kelly of Pennsylvania also had his phone record subpoenaed, but would not be eligible because he is a member of the House of Representatives. Now, what has Hakeem Jeffries said about this? He is the Democratic leader in the House of Representatives. He is the minority leader of the House of Representatives. What has he said? He said it very plainly. And by the way, spoiler alert, following that clip, I'm going to play something from a Republican who seems to agree.
House Democrats are going to offer an amendment before the Rules Committee to get that self-dealing sick provision out of the spending agreement. The notion that 8 Republican senators signed off by John Thune and the Republicans, apparently in the Senate and in the House, would give themselves the ability, essentially, to rip millions of taxpayer dollars away from the American people so they could line their pockets because these people were insurrectionist sympathizers, is insanity.
It is indeed insane. And again, it really does give us a glimpse into just how arrogant and entitled Republicans are, that they will do this bribery, extortion nonsense in public to be paid for by the taxpayers. And it's not just Hakeem Jeffries who has labeled this insane or thinks of it as that. We got a Republican, Austin Scott from Georgia. He doesn't use the word insane, but he is unhappy about it. The only problem is he's a Republican. So he's like, yeah, this is really terrible, but what are you going to do?
So it's given them the ability to retroactively go back. We know, you literally know who, at least, we may not know all of them, but we at least know the list of some of them. In this paragraph, the term violation section 10 is the meaning given to the violation section. It goes on from there. But there's also language in there where it indicates that each account is a separate payment. Now, this language did not go through any committee markup. This language was not shared with the House of Representatives prior to it being put in the bill. And I personally agree that it should be removed. The problem is if we remove it, the Senate, it has to go back to the Senate. And then you're right back to where you were 40 days ago, where all of a sudden you're trying to get a piece of legislation out of the Senate. And so, I mean, I've struggled. I want you to know that, Mr. Cole. I want the American citizen. I've struggled with what the right course of action here is because what they did is wrong.
Yeah, the provision is gross and wrong, but it would be more work if we took it out. The provision is disgusting. It's insane. It's a scandal, but we really got to protect Donald Trump. We got to make sure he gets what he wants, so we're not going to do the right thing. That's the Republican position. It's either public corruption or, yeah, this is not good, but what are you going to do? It's a shoulder shrug from Republicans. Criminality or ignore. That's what we got from Republicans. At least there are some members of the House of Representatives, Hakeem Jeffries included. And look, I've been spending a lot of criticism for Hakeem Jeffries, but when he's going to do the right thing, well, there's not going to be criticism. And this is what we need from our leaders, to speak plainly, to speak clearly, to speak accurately about what is going on. He doesn't go as far as me to call this bribes, but this is what it is. I'd love to know what you think.
You also do have to bring in talent. When
well, we
a
have
country
plenty of talented people
no, you
here.
don't. No, you don't.
We don't have talented people here?
No, you don't have certain talents.
Republicans, I mean, their entire mantra, Donald Trump's campaign slogan was "Make America Great Again." Republicans often talk about the United States being the greatest country the world has ever known. Historic greatness from America. But you can't have a great country if you don't have great people. You can't have a talented country without talented people. The people make the country what it is. And Republicans, they want to act like they love the troops while betraying the troops. They want to act like they support the farmers while betraying the farmers. They want to act like they support manufacturing while betraying manufacturing, the entire industry. And they want to act like they want all of the foreigners out, that immigration is evil, it's bad, except for the ones they want, except for the talent that they want to bring in. And when pressed on it in an interview with Laura Ingraham about this very issue, the H-1B visa, Donald Trump, with his mouth, the Make America Great Again president, the Republican who believes America's the greatest country on the world, on the globe. This is it. That guy said that, no, we don't have talented people. We don't have what it takes to do certain jobs. Americans can't do certain jobs. They're not talented enough. And he even gets pushed back on by Laura Ingraham. This is a remarkable clip, and hopefully Republicans are starting to wake up. I know that most of them aren't. Absolutely, MAGA is a cult, but there is absolutely 3, 5, 7% of the Republican population that will wake up when they hear things like this. Hear Donald Trump speak so disrespectfully about the American populace. Watch this from Laura Ingraham, and credit to Laura Ingraham. Even she is pushing back on this nonsense.
There's never going to be a country like what we have right now.
And does that
the
mean
Republicans have to talk about it, Laura.
And does that mean the H-1B visa thing will not be a big priority for your administration? Because if you want to raise wages for American workers, you can't flood the country with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of foreign workers.
You also do have to bring in talent. When
we
a
have
country
plenty of talented people
you
here.
don't. No, you don't.
We don't have talented people here?
No, you don't have certain talents, and people have to learn. You can't take people off an unemployment line and say, I'm going to put you into a factory where we're going to make missiles, or I'm going to put you.
How did we ever do it before?
Well,
I'll
give you an example. In Georgia, they raided because they wanted illegal immigrants out. They had people from South Korea that made batteries all their lives. You know, making batteries are very complicated. It's not an easy thing. It's very dangerous. A lot of explosions, a lot of problems. They had like 500 or 600 people, early stages, to make batteries and to teach people how to do it. Well, they wanted them to get out of the country. You're going to need that, Laura. I mean, I know you and I disagree on this. You can't just say a country's coming in, going to invest $10 billion to build a plant, and going to take people off an unemployment line who haven't worked in 5 years, and they're going to start making missiles. It doesn't work that way.
We have plenty of talent, she says. No, you don't. No, you don't. He says it with disgust, with contempt for her opinion. No, you don't. No, we don't. We don't have talent. Yeah. Tom Nichols, he tweeted this. I believe Tom Nichols wrote The Death of Expertise, a book. He had something, the dog in this fight. He understands the lay of the land here. And this is what he tweeted. The most anti-immigrant president in recent history now says that Americans are just too stupid and untalented to do most of the jobs that we're going to need to bring in foreigners to do. It's interesting that in this same video, this same interview on Fox News with this same interviewer, Laura Ingraham, they took a little stroll through the White House, and Donald Trump took her to his presidential walk of fame. Just everything about this guy is just jackassery 101. And he starts talking about the talented artisan. Apparently we do have talent in the country, unless an immigrant carved the presidential walk of fame bronze nonsense. Watch him being just beside himself with pride that he has just besmirched the exterior of the White House with his gaudy gold rich guy nonsense.
A lot of people are wondering which child would be the best.
In a certain way, they all could. Take a look at this, fellas. You want to see detail. So, like the sign. Most people would just do a sign, they paint it on the wall. So that's half-inch thick bronze, carved by a very talented person. And it's brass, it's pure brass. It's half-inch thick brass. And you can't just do that. That's, you know, you look at that, that's quality, right? And then we start with George Washington and we go down to Trump. Pretty cool, right?
No, it most certainly is not cool, Donald Trump. There's nothing cool about that. That is stupid and gaudy and ostentatious and tacky and stupid. Did I say stupid? Because it's stupid. It looks stupid and it represents a stupid, stupid man. And it wasn't that. That's not even the worst of it. He takes her around the corner talking about the ballroom construction, and he says something very, very telling about what he's attempting to do to the White House and about what he sees his role as. He was elected to be president of the United States of America, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of these United States, a man who has constitutional obligations to do certain things as president, accepting the job, running for office, winning the election. And he says that his greatest talent is building ballrooms. That's what you want in a president. And then he says, I might as well do this. It's my greatest talent. I might as well do this. Who cares about being president? Who cares about solving food insecurity for millions of people? Who cares about ensuring that Americans have cheap access to healthcare, to save their lives, for them to be able to preserve their life and liberty in pursuit of happiness? Nah. Ballrooms, that's what he's interested in. Watch this.
But I'll show you something. This is the equivalent of what I do with the ballroom. I built many ballrooms and many buildings, and that's my greatest strength, actually. Might as well do this. So this room was in terrible shape. This was done by Jackie Kennedy. Jackie Kennedy Onassis, then Jackie Kennedy, I hope. And she took this area, it's called the Palm Court, and here we had one by one little tiles that were all broken, cheap, out of a box. Mm-hmm. The walls weren't good. We took it, I restored it. I put in new chandeliers. They had lanterns that were terrible.
I remember this room.
Yeah, it was a nothing room. Yeah. It was an embarrassment.
There was a seat, a bench right underneath there. Yeah.
To come to the Oval Office, you had to go through this room. It was an embarrassment, okay? Mm-hmm. And I took it down and rebuilt it, same as she had it, but at a much higher level. And take a look at the floor. Take a look at the marble. So this is called.
It is really pretty.
Statue of marble. But look at the book ending. Look at the book match. Look how it matches.
That's tough to do.
No, it's very tough. You don't get it. If it's an eighth of an inch off, it's no good.
Is that brass? The brass?
That's two brass strips. Mm-hmm. But even if you look at the air conditioner vent, it's book matched.
Oh, yeah.
Look at that. Who can do that? I can do that because I know that, you know, it's even available that you can do that. Mm-hmm. Very few people can do it. So you take a vent that's supposed to be a piece of aluminum or steel. And the marble man said, I said, do you think you could book match a vent? He said, yeah, look at the other one over there. Book match. But look at the quality of that job.
Where do you think you developed?
Weird and gross. And here's what happens when you have a fascist, an authoritarian, a weak but attempting to be strong man in the Oval Office, is he surrounded himself with a bunch of sycophants, a bunch of ass licks, just brown nosers extraordinaire, just the worst of the worst, who are afraid to tell Donald Trump, hey, look, brother, Mr. President, sir, the optics of this are all bad. People are hungry. People are not getting paid who work for the federal government. The people are worried about the planes falling out of the sky because of air traffic control. You're cutting SNAP benefits. You're cutting Social Security and Medicaid, and you're trying to gut the ACA. This all looks terrible that you're adorning the White House in gold and bronze and marble. It's just, bleh, it's pukey, it's gross. Nobody will say that to him, though. And here's what the result of that is. Here's Harry Enten on CNN, just most recently talking about exactly what the opinion. He took the pulse of the American people, and they're not happy. They're pinning, as they well should, justifiably, all of the damage, all of the shitty economy, all of the high prices. They're putting it on Donald Trump.
Donald Trump might be trying to downplay voters' concerns about affordability, but I'm here to tell you that is a ginormous error. It may be an error that goes down in political infamy. Why do I say that? Well, the reason Donald Trump was elected was to fix the problem of inflation. Right back in October of 2024, who was more trust in inflation? It was Donald Trump by 9 points over Kamala Harris. But look at where we are today. Donald Trump is underwater with the Titanic when it comes to inflation. His net approval rating is 26 points underwater. My goodness gracious. Now I know Donald Trump, when things aren't going his way, wants to pass the political buck. He might try and throw it back at Joe Biden's face, the former president. That, simply put, will not work. The American people don't buy it, because get this. More responsible for the current economy, Trump or Biden? We're talking 54%. The clear majority of voters say Donald Trump's more responsible for the current economy than just 21% who say Joe Biden. I will note I've seen this in poll after poll after poll. More folks saying Trump is responsible than Biden. Now, of course, it's one thing if voters don't like the state of the economy, but it's another thing when they don't think that Donald Trump actually gives a hoot. And we see that in the polling, because take a look here. Trump attention to lowering costs, not enough. We're talking about 3 in 4 Americans, 75% overall, who say Trump's not paying enough attention to lowering costs. And even among Republicans, that solid Republican base who oftentimes approves of Trump's job by 85, 90%, 57% of them say that Trump's not paying enough attention to lowering costs. Now, we're talking about Trump. He, of course, at least constitutionally, can't run for another term, but his Republican Party is up in the midterm elections. They should be scared, SH blank, blank, blank list. Why do I say that? Because we just had a test of this. We just had a test of the economy in the off-year elections in New Jersey, in Virginia. And get this, how economy first voters went in 2025. Mikey Sherrill, the Democrat in New Jersey. Get this, she won him by 33 points. How about in Virginia? Abigail Spanberger, the Democrat. She won economy first voters by 27 points. If these numbers hold and Donald Trump continues to try ignore a problem that Americans very much think we have in terms of cost of living affordability, well, it might be adios amigos, goodbye for that House Republican majority, and I dare say the Republican Senate majority as well.
54% say Trump is more responsible for the economy. 57% of Republicans said, hey, he needs to be paying attention to his job, setting his mind to the thing he was elected to do, not the fucking ballroom. And I agree with Harry Enten. Republicans should be scared shitless. The problem is they are in a cult, and they don't view reality through the lens of reality. They think everything's A-okay. They've gotten so used, so accustomed to just repeating a lie a million times, and then all Republicans start to believe it. You can't do that when people are paying more for groceries. They're paying more for gas. They're paying more for energy. It doesn't work that way. They're not going to, they'll deny what they see with their eyes, but they're not going to deny what they feel with their checkbook when they look in their bank account and there's not enough money to pay their bills. There's not enough money to feed their kids. They won't be able to deny that. You can't deny the sound of a growling stomach. We will see, though. We will see. What do you think? I invite you to this conversation. Please subscribe to this channel on YouTube and go like and follow the Facebook page, Dollemore Daily. I would appreciate it very much. That is free to do, and it very much helps out this effort that we're making to save the country and democracy here on this channel and others in this space. Support independent media in that way. You can also comment below this video to have a conversation. You can also call the voicemail line, 714-576-4054. And of course, as always, you can email me, daily@dollemore.com.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome back from your 8 weeks of taxpayer-funded vacation. It's good to see you, and I hope
I'm going to interrupt you.
Republicans
I'm going to interrupt you, please. I am sick and tired of hearing you all say we had an 8-week vacation.
That's exactly what happened.
Republican patriotism is a special thing. It's special in the way that's meant to be derisive. It's a distortion. It's a perversion of what actual patriotism is. Sean Duffy is the Secretary of Transportation, former reality star on MTV, Real Rules, Road Rules, Real World, whatever. He and his dopey wife. That's how they came to fame, and then they switched, and Fox News brought them on to be commentators and anchors. It's just a shit show. And now, because Donald Trump himself is a reality TV game show host, he sees these people through the lens of, oh, this is talent, this is ability. Oh, he can talk on Fox News? Of course he can be the transportation secretary. As planes fall out of the sky on an almost weekly basis. Planes colliding with helicopters here in Washington, D.C. Dozens and dozens and dozens of people lost their lives. Dozens and dozens and dozens of families inextricably destroyed. Carry that trauma with them forever. Because they gutted the budget. They fired federal workers. Now they shut down the government, and these air traffic controllers haven't been getting paid. And some of them were like, look, I can't do it. Imagine this. You got a woman who's an air traffic controller, and her husband also has a job. Her husband doesn't work for the federal government, so he's still getting a paycheck. And they got 2 kids that are in daycare. How are they going to pay for that daycare with one of the incomes taken away? What they would do is stop sending the kids to daycare until the government shutdown ended, and have the mom, the air traffic controller, stay home with the kids. Maybe we'll see. I don't know, right? We could switch genders. It doesn't matter. But to Republicans, to Donald Trump, and to his transportation secretary, the reality TV show MTV dipshit, Sean Duffy, that's unpatriotic to work and not be paid. To work in a highly stressful job where lives, hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of lives are on the line, and you're not getting paid. It's unpatriotic to not do your job. What? Watch him say that here, and we'll break it down on the other side.
The president's also talked about penalizing some of these air traffic controllers who took sick time. So can you talk about what that plan would look like there?
Well, my concern is for those air traffic controllers who, before they missed a paycheck, and we were in the shutdown, they decided on a continual basis not to show up for work. They don't know how long the shutdown was going to be. They hadn't missed a pay period, and they didn't come to work. I'm concerned about those controllers. I'm concerned about their dedication. I'm concerned about their patriotism. And so we haven't made a decision, but we are going to look at those controllers who continually made the decision not to show up for work. And again, we have to look at the data. I would just tell you, I'm trying to bring more air traffic controllers in. I'm not trying to take air traffic controllers out. But if we have controllers who systemically weren't doing their job, we will take action.
One, patriotism isn't a prerequisite for employment, first of all. And even if it were, whose flavor of patriotism are we going to use? Whose? Because I would say it's unpatriotic to not force the government to reopen, to not make our federal workers whole and paid for the work, to pay for their labor. Working for free isn't patriotic. So whose version of patriotism is the requirement for employment? Again, it's patriotic to have hungry children. To Sean Duffy and Donald Trump, it's patriotic to have unpaid bills. Doesn't seem like patriotism to me. Patriotism is a love of country, a love sometimes that requires criticism, because your country's not going to get better if you don't criticize, if you don't correct the things that are wrong, and you're not even going to identify the things that are wrong if you don't criticize. That's what patriotism is. And I believe my country, my Constitution, is strong enough to withstand the barbs of criticism. Not Sean Duffy, though. To him, America is weak. Our Constitution is weak because it can't withstand criticism. It can't withstand people staying home, calling in sick when they're not being paid for their labor. Speaking of not getting paid for your labor, well, speaking of getting paid while you're on an 8-week vacation, the House of Representatives, they are just back now that the government has reopened because of the Senate. They're back at work. Listen, in a Congress filled with Chuck Schumers, Bia Yasmin Ansari. I had the opportunity to sit down with her a few months ago when David Pakman and I went to the United States Capitol and interviewed a few members of Congress. She was one of them. And I was impressed. I was very impressed by her passion, by her heart. She seems like a good and decent person who does have the best interest of her constituency and by extension, the American people in her heart. And she, like I said, in a Congress filled with Chuck Schumers, be her. Watch this as she takes down Virginia Woolf, you know, the cross-eyed lady who screamed "shut up" at people when they were asking questions of Mike Johnson. She is a ghoul, to be sure. And they had a back and forth. And we need this energy to be brought to bear against the Republican Party in the halls of Congress, in the meeting rooms, in the committee hearings. This is what we need. Watch this.
Thank you, Ms. Bonamici. Ms. Ansari, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome back from your 8 weeks of taxpayer-funded vacation. It's good to see you, and I hope
I'm going to interrupt you.
Republicans
I'm
enjoy.
going to interrupt you, please. I am sick and tired of hearing you all say we had an 8-week vacation.
That's exactly what happened.
I worked every day. I don't know about you, but I don't want to hear another soul
We all worked
say
every
that.
single day, and that's exactly what happened with Speaker Mike Johnson.
You're recognized.
I hope that you all enjoyed yourselves while American families looked at their letters from their health insurance companies, terrified that their insurance premiums were going to double or triple while the House was out of session for 53 days. That is unacceptable, Madam Chair.
I'm sick and tired. Nobody cares what you're sick and tired about. I could maybe fill a matchbox with the concern that I have for you being sick and tired, Virginia Fox. You are a high priestess in the cult of Donald Trump. Your entire existence in Congress is to cover for credibly accused rapists of children, to cover for Donald Trump's connections to Jeffrey Epstein. So you can pipe down about what you're sick and tired about. The American people are sick and tired of a dysfunctional government. We're sick and tired of this fascistic attempt of Donald Trump to destroy the country. We're sick and tired of seeing masked secret police kidnapping citizens off the streets of America, brutalizing immigrant populations in this country. We're sick of that. What you're sick and tired about doesn't rate, sister, at all. Anyway, what do you think? I invite you to this conversation.
This president repeatedly, overtly directs the Department of Justice to prosecute his perceived political enemies at the same time that the Department of Justice is not investigating possible corruption.
A federal judge that was appointed by Ronald Reagan in his second term just resigned. And he wrote an essay because as a federal judge, you can't be openly critical of the president. It's not the way things work up to this point. I believe they should be. I think they should be far more vocal. Maybe that would throw a wrench into things that is beyond my comprehension. I don't think so, but maybe. But they're not doing that. And this particular guy, Mark Wolf, appointed in 1985, by the way, to the federal bench by Ronald Reagan, not a radical left lunatic like the Republicans are certainly going to try to paint him. He wrote an essay explaining his reasons for leaving the federal bench, for retiring. Now it's time to retire. He's been there long enough. It's fine. I'm not like, oh, he lost his job. I don't care about that. But what I do care about are the reasons that he gave for leaving. He is maybe the most stark message yet from someone of this particular level of power and influence and position. And it's remarkable. I have two paragraphs from his essay in The Atlantic, maybe three. And then I've got a segment of an interview he gave to PBS NewsHour where he really laid bare here. And if anything, this should be instructive to you about just how dangerous shit is. When sober-minded judges like this individual, serious individual, who take the calling of public service so serious that he will quit in order to criticize the president of the United States because he doesn't feel it's proper. He has so much respect for the judiciary. He has so much respect for the Constitution that he waited to quit to criticize. This is the title in Atlantic. Why I Am Resigning, a federal judge explains his reasoning for leaving the bench, by Mark L. Wolf. In 1985, President Ronald Reagan appointed me as a federal judge. I was 38 years old. At the time, I looked forward to serving for the rest of my life. However, I resigned Friday, relinquishing that lifetime appointment and giving up the opportunity for public service that I have loved. My reason is simple. I no longer can bear to be restrained by what judges can say publicly or do outside the courtroom. President Donald Trump is using the law for partisan purposes, targeting his adversaries while sparing his friends and donors from investigation, prosecution, and possible punishment. This is contrary to everything that I have stood for in my more than 50 years in the Department of Justice and on the bench. The White House's assault on the rule of law is so deeply disturbing to me that I feel compelled to speak out. Silence, for me, is now intolerable. This is what we need from leaders. This guy is a conservative. This guy is Ronald Reagan appointed. This isn't some Obama appointee, some Clinton appointee, some Biden appointee. This is a conservative, Republican-appointed judge that still rules and thinks about his job as a conservative. And even he says, enough is enough. He's sounding the alarm bell here. Others who have held positions of authority, including former federal judges and ambassadors, have been opposing this government's efforts to undermine the principled, impartial administration of justice and distort the free and fair functioning of American democracy. They have urged me to work with them. As much as I have treasured being a judge, I can now think of nothing more important than joining them and doing everything in my power to combat today's existential threat to democracy and the rule of law. He is calling what is taking place in America right now. And by the way, this should be a message to every Democrat senator. Do not vote for Donald Trump's nominees. Do not vote for Donald Trump's agenda. Do not vote to reopen the government, allowing Donald Trump to destroy it even more. Do not. A federal judge, a Reagan appointee, is saying this is an existential threat to the nation. And if you are a United States Senator, I would expect that I don't have to go to dictionary.com for you to understand or learn what an existential threat is. He doesn't end. This is, I will link below. If there's a gift link needed, I'll put that. If they offer that, I'll put that in the description below. You should read every single word of this. But I'm going to end it, what I'm reading, with this particular statement by him. What Nixon did episodically and covertly, knowing it was illegal or improper, Trump does now routinely and overtly. How's that wrong? Anyway, he was on PBS NewsHour. They interviewed. I'll link below to this because this is like a 9.5 minute, 10-minute interview, and I'm only going to give you 3.5 minutes or so. This is important to listen to. This is an alarm bell about the state of our nation. Watch this.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you and with some of the American people.
I should say you have spent 50 years with the Department of Justice and on the bench. You have seen a lot of presidents come and go. What is so worrying about this moment and this president that made you want to speak out?
Well, I think this president is unique and uniquely dangerous. When a new president is elected, he or she is entitled to set priorities for the Department of Justice. But we have an ideal that's crucial to me and many others of equal justice under law. And this president repeatedly, overtly directs the Department of Justice to prosecute his perceived political enemies at the same time that the Department of Justice is not investigating possible corruption by people close to the president and people who are doing things to profit the president and his family. So that's utterly inconsistent with, as I said, this fundamental principle of equal justice under law, to which I've dedicated my professional life for 50 years, and it's personal to me. It's deeply disturbing.
So from your time in the Department of Justice during Watergate, you've seen presidents push the limits of power. You've also seen the guardrails hold. Why are you worried that they won't hold now?
Well, I'm worried in part because I think all of the abuse that's been showered on the courts and the judges is causing people to lose confidence in the integrity and the impartiality of the judicial process. When the Supreme Court ordered Richard Nixon to turn over the tapes he made secretly in the Oval Office that had incriminating information about him and his close colleagues, he understood that he had to obey that order because the American people would not tolerate disobedience, and he would have been impeached and removed. I'm not sure, I'm not confident that that would occur today, because when judges, like my colleagues, rule against the president, he says that they're corrupt and they should be impeached. And the judges are not in a position to respond except by continuing to do their work with integrity and impartially. But I'm afraid that that's not a message that's getting to the American people.
From your conversations with your fellow judges, do others share these concerns? How widely held is this concern?
We don't discuss particular cases, but I would say that this concern is widely held. The judges work hard. The criticism from the president, I believe, doesn't influence the way any cases are being decided by any judge that I know. We, or now they, do their work and hope it speaks for itself. But it is disturbing to be called crooked, not because it hurts your feelings, but because when that doesn't get answered, many people might think you really are crooked. And indeed, the president's vitriolic comments have coincided with threats of harm, death threats, among others, to many federal judges. And people are genuinely concerned, judges are genuinely concerned about that.
And look, I ended it there. It goes on for more minutes, more important stuff. But it's not just an existential threat to the country. This guy actually recognizes that there could be physical violence brought against him. There could be attacks from the president of the United States. This is the existential crisis that he's talking about. Donald Trump is the existential threat that he's talking about, that he resigned his position as a federal judge over. Where are Republicans? Well, they're securing legislation that Donald Trump can bribe them with $500,000 payouts from the taxpayer DOJ-funded bribe kitty. What's the word? Kettle? Cauldron of bribe money? Disgusting. Republicans, wake up. Voters in the Republican Party, wake up. This is what you're fueling. This is the destruction of America as told by a Ronald Reagan, your other God, judge. Anyway, What do you think, the rational and reasonable individuals in the audience out there? You can comment below in the comments. You can also call the voicemail line, 714-576-4054. And of course, as always, you can email me daily@dollemore.com. I love and appreciate you very much. Please consider supporting this work for $2 a month. You can become a channel member on YouTube. Click the join button below this video. You can also go over to patreon.com/IDoubtIt podcast. Both those are great ways to help support this work. We need new, fresh blood, people who have the energy and the intellect to fight back, to save our country. So I'm gonna wrap today talking about accountability for our leaders. I've been calling for the removal of Chuck Schumer as minority leader. He doesn't have to quit his job. I mean, that would be preferable. I begged Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to primary Chuck Schumer. Please, AOC, please someone share this with AOC. Please, AOC, please. I'm not being shitty, or it's not a joke. Please primary Chuck Schumer, become a senator from New York, and let's have some actual leadership in that chamber. But in the realm of accountability for our leaders, I want to talk about an interview very briefly that you should go check out on Brittany Page's channel, Bringing It Full Circle. I started my first video talking about it, and now we're going to end it here at the end of the show talking about it here. She interviewed an author, a UCLA professor and author of The Coroner's Silence, Death Records and the Hidden Victims of Police Violence, Professor Terrence Keel. And this is, it goes right into what we're talking about with accountability, where coroners in different municipalities have colluded with police to cover for their brutality that resulted in the death of United States citizens and others, not just citizens, people, victims of their crimes. She interviewed him, and I know it's one of those things that, yeah, we know that these people work hand in hand, but when you have the proof, then you can go to a court. You can secure indictments. You can secure convictions. We can change the culture. It's not just you. Like, yeah, you know, but there's a lot of people out there that don't know. There's a lot of people out there that aren't convinced. And this kind of evidence will convince them. And we need a culture, a sea change in how we think about police in this country, more now than ever before, while we have masked, violent, secret police in the streets, abusing, oppressing, providing tyranny in Chicago, soon to be New Orleans, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, and other cities. Anyway, go check out that interview. There'll be a linked comment below, and it'll be in the description. Please, it is very important that this information gets out. Now, let's talk about other levels of accountability for our leaders, even in our party. Chuck Schumer, he says all the things that are just kind of milquetoast in the middle of the road. And when we fight, we win. And then he doesn't fight. He's not leading an opposition party. He's a mousy minority leader in the United States Senate. It's just what it is. I believe he was behind the 8 senators who sold out their constituencies, who were turncoats against the American people, and reopened the government with Republicans, along with provisions of bribery for Republican senators who got swept up in an investigation over their attempts to overthrow the United States government. That's where we are right now. And there's a way to get rid of Chuck Schumer. That any Democrat can call for his replacement as minority leader. Again, it's not kicking him out of the Senate. He's not losing his job if this happens. He'll just be replaced by somebody who has the fight in them. Somebody like Chris Murphy. I don't know. I haven't given enough thought to who I would like to see. It certainly wouldn't be a Tim Kaine. It certainly wouldn't be a Jeanne Shaheen. It certainly wouldn't be any one of those 8 Democrats who turned their backs on the American people. But there's a few in the party who have institutional knowledge enough to do the job of minority leader. Certainly enough. This is a little bit from the article in the American Prospect, which outlines exactly what we're talking about here. One weird trick to get rid of Chuck Schumer: any single Democrat can force a vote on Schumer's job as minority leader. Under the rules for the Democratic Conference, members can make rule amendments by submitting proposals directly to the conference for consideration, with 1 week of notice, Schumer said. That's an individual who they were talking to in this article. Not Schumer, but Schumann. The language comes toward the bottom of the rules in Section 14, which is titled Committee on Conference Rules, referring to an internal committee of senators who set the standard for the Democratic caucus. It states that committee members whose names are not made public will review the rules of each Congress and may recommend changes to the rules as need arises. It also states that, quote, individual members of the conference may bring proposed changes in the rules to the Committee on Conference Rules or directly to the conference for its consideration, providing members of the conference with the text of the proposed changes to the conference rules at least 1 week before conference consideration. In either instance, the members proposing the changes shall retain sole discretion of the wording of such changes. Now, that's a whole bunch of Robert's Rules of Orders-y kind of language that just kind of gets lost in the verbosity of it all, right? Here's what it means. What this means is that any member of the Senate Democratic Congress can bring a challenge to Schumer's continued leadership up for a vote. They would only need a majority of the caucus, or 24 of the 47 members, in order for the vote to succeed. So what are we waiting for, United States Senate? Democrats in the United States Senate? What are we waiting for? Chris Murphy. I mean, he's the guy who's coming to mind because he seems to be the most active in doing the right thing after having made a few blunders early on in Donald Trump's second term here. I'm not talking to a Cory Booker. I'm not talking to the middle of the road individuals who are good enough to get along in this moment. I'm talking to the resistors. I think Bernie Sanders would be fine. I think he's old. He's too old for this. I think we need younger blood, new leadership in the United States Senate. Chuck Schumer is not entitled to be minority leader in the United States Senate. Dick Durbin's been there longer than him. He's another problem. It's this old guard of the United States Senate that holds to this old political order that no longer exists, that we need to get rid of. We need to push them out. We need to, every single of the 8 Democrats, the 7 Democrats and 1 independent in Angus King, every one of them needs to go. We need new, fresh blood, people who have the energy and the intellect to fight back, to save our country. Republican judges, as I just talked about, are sounding the alarm about the existential threat to the nation that Donald Trump poses. And we've got Democrats voting for Donald Trump's nominees. Cory Booker voted for Jared Kushner's dad to be a diplomat, to be an ambassador. If that's not forwarding the agenda of Donald Trump, I don't know what the is. New blood. Here's the roadmap. Get it done, United States Senate. Get it done, Democrats. This is where you come in the audience, now that I'm done yelling at the United States Senate. What a weird job. 202-224-3121. That's the Capitol switchboard that I have memorized, that you should have memorized. This is the number that you should be calling all the time. Call your Democratic senator. Demand, not if it's one of the 8, because maybe if it is one of the 8, because it'll convey to them you're unhappy. 202-224-3121. Call your Democratic senator and let them know you want Schumer removed. And if you need to point him to the video, point him to the video. The bottom of the rules of Section 14. The rules for the Democratic Conference. That's what you do. Do your job. 202-224-3121. And if you don't agree that Chuck Schumer should be replaced, I'd love to hear why. You can tell me in the comments below, and you can also call and yell at me on my voicemail line, 714-576-4054. And of course, as always, you can email me daily at Dollemore.com. Please go check out that interview with Brittany Page and Professor Terrence Keel. I would appreciate it very much. She would appreciate it very much. The country would appreciate it very much. We need as many people sounding off about these injustices as we can. I love and appreciate you very much. I will see you next time. A lot of very much, it seems. At the end of today. Anyway, I'll see you next time. Be genuine and take care of one another.